At Fight Night Picks, we often talk about fights that are going to be a striker's paradise. And somewhere in Stillwater, Oklahoma, there's a fight fan that's as horny for this fight as a cougar on Christmas Eve, because we have a wrestler's paradise between a couple of streaky scramblers in Merab the Machine Dvalishvili, no, it's not Bert Kreischer, taking on the second Spartan to be featured on this card in Cody Stamann, Michigan's own, now fighting out of Las Vegas, representing Extreme Couture. And I found a very, very interesting quotable and interview from our own JHK, but with Sports Kita, and we won't discriminate. And in that, Cody Stamann was talking about Merab Dvalishvili kind of peeping in at the PI as Cody Stamann was trying to get ready for this fight. And he was trying to spar at the PI. And the quotable was, and I will get it right and give them credit where credit is due, I just don't think Merab kind of thinks anything of it. I just think he's kind of a squirrely little dude. So Merab being squirrely and like Merab, just kind of trying to peep on the striking session that Cody Stamann was going to have.
Does Stamann realize they're the same size?
They are the same size. So when you call a little guy, it's just
a couple of short kings in this fight is what we're getting at.
A couple of little fellers. Now, Matt, when we look at this fight, though, for Cody Stamann, he's been at Extreme Couture for a very long time. We talked about Kamaka making the move there, but the Dan Iges of the world, the Mads Burnells, the Jeremy Kennedys, you're going to get what you're going to get, but a lot of really good wrestle boxers down in those lower weight classes. Throw Justin James in there as well. For Merab Dvalishvili, I have to say this. He'll have Ray Longo in his corner. I'm assuming maybe he's going to have Aljamain Sterling in his corner. This is going to be his first fight without, come on, Merab, Matt Serra in his corner. And I think that's actually going to play a big enough factor into it. I love the fight. Merab, out of his first 7 UFC fights, has 54 friggin' takedowns. Nobody else has come close to those numbers. For Cody Stamann, again, he is a wrestler, and that's primarily what he's going to use. He can strike to get into a clinch, to take you down, to try and stay on top of you. Merab is just going to throw caution to the wind. He's going to try and reserve his energy a little bit. He's an absolute cardio king, and if you go back and look at his last fight, between the second and third rounds, he's not really sucking wind all that much. He's standing up and getting instruction from his corner. So it'll be interesting to see how this fight goes. But I love the matchup. There's probably somebody at Oklahoma State that's excited because I mentioned Stillwater. It's actually a pretty cool town. I've been there one time, old Cowboy Corner. But overall, Matt, I love this fight. It should be a good one.
There's so many strikers at bantamweight that are really happy that this fight got booked because these guys are both just a lot of contenders' kryptonite. Even Sean O'Malley, for instance. I think Sean O'Malley's a really good fighter. I do. But Merab Dvalishvili is a terrible matchup for him. And so is Cody Stamann because both these guys, I'm not going to say they make fights boring. Okay, Cody Stamann makes fights boring. Let's just call it like it is. Now, he tried to fight in that Cody Stamann way against Jimmy Rivera, but it is interesting. When Cody Stamann was fighting kind of not lower level of competition, but just on his way up the rankings, that wrestling was good enough to get him wins, and he could just resort to his wrestling. I kind of mentioned how, like Carla Esparza, at the end of the day, when she panics, she wrestles. Cody Stamann, when he panics, he wrestles, and not just to the point where he's always panicking, nothing like that, but he just does wrestle a lot. When he does get into any trouble, the wrestling can normally get him out of whatever trouble he encounters. But as he is making his way up the rankings, you're encountering guys like Aljamain Sterling, who is like, okay, take me down. I really don't care. Once you take me down, that's where I'm at my best. And you did see Cody Stamann struggle in the grappling department when it did become more than just a wrestling match. And then go to Cody Stamann's fight against Jimmy Rivera. He tried to wrestle him. What's Jimmy Rivera really, really good at, though? He's a great wrestler, and I would say he's slightly more than just a wrestle boxer. He's a good striker, but he's a slightly more well-rounded striker, I would say, than Cody Stamann. And he's a much faster guy, too, at the end of the day. And you could see Stamann started to struggle against guys who they don't have different styles, and you ask yourself, okay, what does this guy's style look like against Stamann's? It was, how do you out Cody Stamann? You put him in there with a guy like Jimmy Rivera. Now, stylistically, is Dvalishvili and Jimmy Rivera, are they exact copies of each other? Well, no. Dvalishvili, much more offensive with his wrestling, whereas Rivera uses his more in a defensive manner. But on the feet, I'd say there's a few similarities between the two. Rivera, much more technically sound, don't get me wrong. But the thing with Dvalishvili is he does have dangerous hands. Even go back to the Raufeon Stotts fight. Yeah, it was only 15 seconds, but like that one punch put him completely out. And it was something from Dvalishvili that you don't always think of when you do think of Merab. When I think of Merab, honestly, the first thing I think of is Craig screaming, "Come on, Merab." And the second thing I think of are the immense amount of takedowns that he is able to get in the majority of his fights. I really thought that Brad Katona fight was going to be a tough one for Merab Dvalishvili. But he went out there and just absolutely absolutely mopped the floor with a guy who I thought was a decent wrestler to begin with.
So, in the Rafi and Stotts fight, that one spinning back fist, and he's done it since then in fights, and he does it so many times that sometimes it looks like he's going to go up like a helicopter into the air. Like, he will spam that. He's coming in on a tidy little win streak. He beat Terrion Ware, who had the hardest strength of schedule you're ever going to see. Brad Katona, Casey Kenny, Gustavo Lopez, and then John Dodson. And I think the best win out of all those is Casey Kenny, that he out-wrestled him and took him down. He did the same thing against Gustavo Lopez. The John Dodson fight, I went back and watched it a couple of times today, and it's weird because Dodson just didn't really do anything. Like, he didn't do the Magic Man. He wasn't really kind of throwing in combination. Yeah, they had that weird sequence going into the third round where they decided to both yell at each other to pump each other up, but it was weird. Merab didn't really do a whole lot either. He picked his opponent up, and then John Dodson, as soon as he gets slammed down, Dodson would be pushing away, standing right back up, scurrying away like the little guy he is. So it's a weird fight. Because again, for Cody Stamann, you talked about it. You look at the loss, okay, that's against Jimmy Rivera. It'll happen. Aljamain Sterling, almost 3 years ago. Then in the middle, the Song Yadong, where, listen, it was a close fight. Could you make a decision or an argument for either guy? Sure you could. The wins, Alejandro Perez and then Brian Kelleher. That Kelleher was like the statement Cody Stamann performance, and I won't dwell on it for too long, but his brother just passed away. It was super emotional. There probably wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. I don't want to make light of it, but Cody Stamann looked amazing in that fight. That's a great one. I know a lot of people ride or die with the Georgian Merab, and listen, we have 2 Georgians on this card, just like we have 2 Canadians. We picked against the 2 Canadians earlier on. For Merab, he's coming in here a pretty big favorite. He opened up somewhere in the realm of a minus 140. He's all the way to a minus 246 at best fight odds. For Cody Stamann, open to plus 120. He's a plus 198 or thereabouts. Tapology votes, 1,019 total votes, 86% Merab, 91% by decision. Can Merab just grind and use the sambo that he has and the judo in his back pocket to get the win over the collegiate wrestler in Cody Stamann? It's a tricky fight. What do you think?
I think he can. I really do. And it's just the problem with Stamann. Even go back to the Yadong fight. I've never seen Cody Stamann win an exchange on the feet. And I don't really think that's an exaggeration. Go back to the Yadong fight. Song absolutely dominates him on the feet. The issue is, it's one of those weird fights where Stamann gets the takedowns, but he's not able to really secure much with the takedowns. He gets the takedown. He gets the top position. He's preventing Song from really teeing off on the feet or going with his game plan. So he is still winning the fight, if you will. But it did remind me a lot of when Deron Wynn fought Darren Stewart. And it's like, okay, Wynn's getting the takedowns, but not doing anything with them. And when they are on the feet, Stewart's actually hitting him and damaging him quite a bit. So my issue with Stamann is, if they're on the feet, do I think Stamann can at least jab and be competent enough, I'll say, to not get dropped and not get outstruck? Well, yeah, I think he's a sound enough defensive fighter for that. But my issue comes down to, when he's the one who's going to be asked to move forward and land really at all and use anything other than his wrestling as a way to move and really push Merab backwards, I just don't think Stamann has those secondary tools in his gas tank, or really in his toolbox. So I'm going to pick Merab Dvalishvili. It's not that I'm really that sold on Merab as like the future champ. I know a lot of people are kind of, really saying that he could be like a Zabit, where he hasn't done all these things yet, but you just wait till he gets the opportunity. I don't know if Merab is going to be that top guy in this division. I just think 135 is such a shark tank right now that it's hard to really say any guy can go on and become the future champ. But for me, I do think Merab can do enough to get past Cody Stamann.
To quote Cody Stamann, I'm ever so slightly just going to go with that squirrely little guy in Merab Dvalishvili. And listen, again, the striking, is it totally there? Well, it doesn't really need to be, because again, he's so offensive. He's always pushing a pace on his opponents. Can he out-pressure Cody Stamann? That's going to be interesting. That remains to be seen this weekend. I think it's a tight fight. I don't really like the line on Merab, so I leave it off my card, in all honesty. But I do love the fight. And Stillwater, maybe you're in Iowa, this is the fight for you. If you like Jared Rosholt fights, you're going to love this fight. So, Matt, we're both going with the Georgian, Merab Dvalishvili, to get the win. Let us know down below in the comments section who you're going with, because I can see it probably 50-50 in the comments, even though Tapology and the odds say otherwise. I bet there's a lot of people out there that have Stamann and a lot that are out there that have Dvalishvili. So let us know. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say.
Let's get into it.